Greetings and welcome. We are in day 2 of our 2013 fall semester. And now the question for us, and it's one that maybe you even want to write down there on the paper in front of you, is why the work? Why the work? What exactly is it that we're being asked to do? Another way to think about this, and I think some of us who have done this right before will say it out loud, the rhythms. It's all about the rhythms. The sooner you understand the rhythms of the course, the sooner you can begin to adapt to the workload. So let's begin now by asking the simple question, what really is the focus of the course? And the answer right away is standards. State standards. Now I think this will make sense to you if you'll think about it. We are focusing on 2 state standards for our entire year together. The first of those is reading. The second of those is writing. Okay? Now, if we can get those 2 state standards addressed, then we know we're doing okay in this class. Got me? If you'll think about it, another way to say that is, the only 2 things we really have to do the whole time we're in 303 is some reading and some writing. Right? But here's the problem. I could say to any one of you, okay, do a little reading and do a little writing, and you come back to Mr. McGee and say, okay, I did it, and I go, oh, okay, I'll give you the A. But wait a minute, there's a problem. How do I know that you did the reading? How do I know that you did the writing? See, this is our problem, isn't it, right? So we have the next step, assessments. Now that word, assess, simply means to check. That's all it means. So if we're checking that you did the reading, if we're checking that you did the writing, then we can know that you met the state standard. Does that make sense? Our goal as students is to make sure that our assessment scores are at least at 60. Why? Because at 60 we know what? We pass the class, right? That for us is job 1. Now, some of us will say, I want to be much higher than simply passing at 60. That's fine. We can work to make sure that our assessment scores are higher than 60, but our first goal is to be 260, right? So, we have some simple ways that we do that. The first way that we do that is through our exams. Okay? We take periodic exams. Now, the way this works is, I give you some reading to do. Okay? I will assign some passages for you to read. The majority of that work will come out of our hymnal, that textbook that we've already given to you. Right? So you'll go home. You will sit down. You will take out that hymnal. You will have a certain number of pages that you are assigned to look at. That's the information that you put in your day planner. Before you come to class, you sit down and do some reading. But we don't call it reading anymore. From here on out, we call it annotation, which simply means reading and taking notes. Now, why do we have to take notes? 2 reasons. 1, if you take the notes, you can show me the notes. Does that make sense? If you take the notes, you can show me the notes. That is a form of assessment. Does that make sense? That's a form of checking up. It's a way for you to say, not only am I telling you that I read from the book, I'm showing you that I read from the book. And dude, if you can show me that you've read from the book, I'm able to say to anyone who asks outside of room 303, there's some reading taking place. The second reason we do annotations is obviously we want to prepare for the exams, right? Because here's the problem. I don't give you a reading at the beginning of the hour and then test you at the end of the hour. That's not the way it works. I give you a reading today or tomorrow, and then we test in 2 weeks. 14 days from now, sometimes it's hard to remember everything we read, right? So we take notes so we can review for the exam. Does that make sense? Got me? The notes that we take, the annotations that we take, we record them on our test sheet. That's why we wrote that down. Every time we do some annotation work, it's self-recording. We just simply check off if we get it done. Make sense? Okay. The second way that we assess our standards is what we will call the read, write, often referred to as R/W, okay? Reading, writing, assessment packets. Reading, writing, assessment packets. Now some of you maybe looked on your course outline and you saw this RW packet and you were a little unclear. Once a week, you'll notice on your course outline, you will have one of these reading, writing, assessment packets. Now what exactly is that? That's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. In the reading, writing, assessment packet, you are handing in material to McGee that allows me to check up or to assess that you're doing the two state standards of reading and writing. Make sense? So you'll take some of your annotations, the ones from the previous week basically, okay? You put them all together for me. You have a piece of writing that you will write for me that you'll type up. You'll put that together along with the annotations. You'll staple it and you'll hand it in to me through the Omega file and the Great Bend. Now to help you and me, because I see lots of these packets through the course of a week, we create a cover sheet. Simple. We have a simple page, call it a table of contents. That's an easy way to think of it. A listing of everything that's in the packet. We actually make it a listing of everything that's supposed to be in the packet. That's where we start. Does that make sense? So in other words, we just simply list all of the assigned annotations that were supposed to be part of this packet. We simply just type them, bullet point them, one right after the other. Okay? Then, after the little bullet pointing, we will simply write the word complete, if it's done, in the packet, or incomplete, and we always mark incompletes with red ink so that it's visibly obvious to Mr. McGee didn't get done. If you have a reason why it didn't get done, ran out of time, technology problems, left my textbook somewhere, whatever, you can always write the reason even in red ink there as well. Make sense? At the bottom of our cover sheet, we always then will have the information regarding our writing assessment. We'll always put the topic that we were assigned, and then we'll always put there, by cutting and pasting, our primary thesis of our essay and our primary points of validation, our topic sentences. That will allow for me, very quickly, to know what your paper is about. Got me? So for example, if I've given you an assigned topic, I can tell really quickly, a way for me to assess, whether you actually did it or not. Does that make sense? And then you staple it with your cover sheet, and you hand it in to Mr. McGee on the day it's due. Make sense? Now normally, the way we work is, we have a 3:15 deadline on the day it's due. Okay? So this allows for you, if you have to get some printing done, you have to put it all together, you have to finish some last minute annotation work, you can get all of that done and make sure that you get it into me by 3:15 that day. To miss the day that it's due will often mean then that the highest score you can get on that packet is a 60. Once you miss the deadline, the highest score you can get is a 60. Okay? So if you're interested in receiving something higher than a 60, you really want to pay attention to these deadlines. Make sense? On the other hand, let's say it's due for you on Tuesday and you don't get it in on Tuesday. Don't worry, you will get it in. I will make sure that it gets turned in on some level. I will have you do some annotation and some writing for me so that I can get to a 60. That's my no-fail policy. I absolutely guarantee you, you will always hand in to me a read-write packet. The question will obviously be the quality, right? If I have to, I literally have you sit down and I have you handwrite something for me. So that way I for sure have something, right? I have to have some level of assessment. Does that make sense? How well you do the assessment will determine how high you get above 60 points. Make sense? Now I want to go back to the exams for a second. Because when you take the exam, you will come into class, we will go to the commons area normally, unless we're a really small group, which rarely we are, and we will take with us a Scantron and a number 2 pencil, okay? We will go to the commons area, we sit down in different parts of the room so that we're not by each other. I hand out an exam, you will never write on the exam, okay? You will then provide the answers on the Scantron. We then run the Scantron And the score appears written at the bottom of your test sheet. Okay, now if you look at your test sheet real quickly, and I recommend that you maybe do it, if you look at your test sheet real quickly, you will see that there at the bottom it will say, I think the language is what? Actual Scantron score or something like that. What's it say? Scantron score or something like that? It says Scantron score, the exam before adjustments. Yeah, there it is. That score will appear there. That is your Scantron score. However, that is not your final score. You can see right below it, there are potential plus and sometimes negative points that have to be assigned to your exam. Got me? Part of the plus points, of course, has to do with how well you've checked off those annotations listed in Part 1. Did you get it all done? Some of that will have to do with what we call it Section 2. Look at it with me now. Typed papers. Now, what are typed papers? Typed papers are assigned practice writing. Okay? All you have to do is do the actual paper, hand it in to me through the grade bin before the day of the exam, and I give you some plus points. It's a way for you to practice your writing. Got me? And in fact, we can have several of these before an examination. On the Learn Strong site, this is what we often will refer to as plus points for the test sheet. Does that make sense? So I can give you an assigned topic. Now, you don't have to do it most of the time. It's not like you lose points if you don't do it. You just don't gain any kind of points. The third section of the test sheet, do you see it, has to do with class participation. So, for example, I say, hey, why don't we all just take out a blank sheet of paper and let's do a little quick exercise. You kick it to me through the grade bin in the Omega file. I look at it, I give you a +1. I give you a +2, which is not a bad thing if you're right at the top of a score, you're trying to go to the next one. So you get a 79, hurrah, you got a +1, now you're at the B, you got the 80. See how that works? The final section, number 4, is the potential recitation. Every once in a while, I'll ask you to memorize some material, and then you recite it, either to me or to a colleague, different ways we do this, and then those plus points occur as well there. We tally, total, all of our plus points. That gets added to your Scantron score, to your test score, right there on the paper. And the next day after the exam, when you come to class, you open your Omega file, and there, in my green ink, will be your score. That's the score you record on your Omega record sheet. That's the score that's recorded in Infinite Campus. If the score is below a 60, there will be some instruction for you about what you have to do to get your score up to a 60. A lot of times it will be, I need you to write something for me. Sometimes it will be, I need you to come in after school and retake the test, whatever it is, so that I can be sure I can get you to that 60 point. See how that works? Okay? And then it's up to you to decide if you want to actually do the additional work to get to 60 points or not. Right? Because you have the right to fail. I deeply respect your right to fail. I mean, you can choose to fail if you so wish, and I don't want to get in the way of that choice. But I want to help you understand there's any number of ways that I can help you to make sure you get to that 60 or beyond. All right? So our work in the class is all about organization. Here's why. The only way I'm going to get the annotations done, the only way I'm going to prepare for the exam, the only way I'm going to get the writings done for the read-write packets is to know what the assignments are. Because here's our problem. Most of us are okay with single deadlines. I give you one deadline, you go, you do it. Most of us can do that okay. But that's not this course. In this course, I will say to you, tomorrow I need this done, Project A. In 3 days, I need Project B done. In 6 days, Project C is coming in. In 10 days, Project D is coming in, ready, go. And the problem for a lot of us is, I start on Project A, get a little bit into Project B, and C and D I never even look at. This is what we call multiple deadlines. The only way you can accomplish multiple deadlines is to be organized. So, we use what we call a master schedule. Our master schedule is basically kind of 2 parts. 1, what is due? What is due? 2, when is it due? Let me give you an example. It does not help you, really, to know. If I tell you that you're going to have an exam next week, if I don't tell you the actual day, the better specifics, the better you can prepare. Would you agree? It would be different if I were to say, next Monday we have an exam versus next Friday we have an exam. Agreed? It helps to know, well, dude, is it Monday or Friday? Which is it? But to know that there's an exam coming doesn't mean anything to you if you don't know what's on the exam or what it's covering. Agreed? There's a huge difference, for example, between I'm going to have you sit down and write something for me as the exam, or I'm going to give you 400 questions of multiple choice that you have to answer in 50 minutes. I will never do that, by the way. That was just an example. That was just an example. But the point I'm making is, it makes sense to know what kind of exam. Now, I will say this out loud. Are you ready for this? I will never, ever ask you to do something for me that I don't first teach you how to do. Never. Got me? So if I'm asking you to do something, I will always tell you and teach you how I want you to do that first. Okay? Which is why we don't have an exam for a few days. Right? We've got to learn this annotation process, for example. We've got to learn how to do a little bit of reading before we actually test over the reading. Your job with master scheduling right now is to take the information off of the course outline and write it into your day planner. Once it's in your day planner, you then have the ability to know what's coming. When we do master schedule review in class, as we did a few seconds ago, you get in detail then what is coming. Then it's your job to sit down and make a to-do list. What is it that I need to get done? And you can kind of prioritize that to-do list. Now, the students who do well in this class are the ones who know how to use their weekends. Why do I say that? Why do you imagine I say that? Because if you're doing the work of this class night by night, you're going to struggle. I have Wednesday tomorrow. I'm Tuesday night. I have Wednesday tomorrow. I'm going to sit down and do Wednesday's work on on Tuesday night, the night before. See, here's the problem. Multiple deadlines start to back up, right? So, for example, Friday's a classic example of next week. Not only coming on Thursday night before next Friday, not only do you have reading annotation, you also have all the major deadlines of the master schedule deadline. If you wait until Thursday night to try and throw all that work together, you're going to have a long night of it. Which is why it makes a whole lot of sense that early on, you're always looking out in front. What some students try to do on the weekends is get all of the reading done for the next week. They just sit down and try and get all the reading done. That way, for them, in the evenings during that week, all they have to do is some of the annotation work to prepare for the next day's lecture. Does that make sense? Looking ahead with the read-write packets is crucial as well. If a read-write packet comes due on a Tuesday, you do not want to be doing that on a Monday. Why not? Because what happens if you have technology issues and you show up on Tuesday and say, I didn't get it done because my computer went down? That's fine. I will say, no worries, we're going to get it in. Yeah, but I'm going to get it in late, which means I get a 60. Right, that's right, that's right. Yeah, but I don't want a 60. Which is why the next read-write packet, you're not going to start the night before, huh? Isn't that great? See, thank you, Mr. McGee, for making me a better student. Because I'm going to learn that I'll start much earlier, right? And that way, if I start earlier, I have a higher chance of getting a higher point on my read-write packets. Make sense? Now to finish, we're working with the core of our class is that state standard of reading. Does this make sense? You got nothing to say in your writing if you haven't done any reading. Because your writing is a response to the reading. Do you understand what I just said? Got me? Your writing is primarily a response to the reading. So the reading now for us is crucial. With that in mind, I want to talk real quickly about annotation. Now, because there is information online at Learn Strong at the Week 1 folder, an introduction to annotation. If any of what I'm talking about right now is problematic for you, there's two places you need to go. One, you need to go to page 2 of the Day 1 packet. There is a single page introducing annotation. 2, you need to go to Learn Strong, to the Week 1 folder, where there will be an introduction to annotation video that's uploaded to YouTube that you can watch. And a few people have watched it, okay? Where I go into a lot more detail. All right? However, now I just want to introduce you to annotation, and I'd like you to have that little poem that we handed out to you, the rainbow, with in front of you, okay? By the way, on Learn Strong, especially those of you who are new, I also recommend 2 other videos that you might want to watch. One on jam writing, which will introduce you to our method of writing, and the second on organization and master scheduling. That will help you immensely if you're able to find those. What I would say about that is, taking some notes makes some sense. All right? Taking some notes makes some sense. And I would say it this way. If you were to take notes over all those different lectures, and you were to put those on a sheet of paper and kick those to me through the gray bin before the first exam, I probably would find a way to give a few points on a test sheet for stuff like that. Does that make sense? I mean, obviously, you're trying to learn the information. I want to reward that. And a few extra points can maybe help you for that first exam, which is sometimes a little difficult to take the first exam of a prof, huh? It's just hard. You got to learn how does the instructor test, etc. So helping yourself is a good idea. Annotation, 3 parts. What we do pre-class, before class, what we do in class, and what we do after class. It's a 3-part gig. What notes we're taking before we come to class, what notes we're taking in class, what notes we take after class. Now, there's a suggested protocol here where you divide your paper in half down the center, and on the left-hand side of the line, you take pre-class notes, and on the right-hand side of the line, you take in-class notes. The pre-class notes, I recommend that you take with red ink. The reason is because many of you are going on to university where you're going to buy your books, and I'm going to recommend that you take notes inside of the book as well as off of the book, and I'm going to recommend you do those notes in red ink. The pre-class notes then are notes you take while you're reading. The first thing you always do is good record keeping. You want to log in. And then after the login information, you're ready to go. For those of you who are writing this information down now, I will say to you, I wouldn't waste my time. This information is right there on page 2 of the Day 1 handout. And if you want, you can have page 2 of the Day 1 handout there, and you can make notes on that page if you feel you need it. Again, it will help you to be able maybe to just see it there. What kinds of notes in pre-class notes are we taking? We look at 3 levels of reading. A level 1 level of reading, level 2, and level 3. Our 3 levels of reading answer 3 questions. Level 1, what does this text say? Level 2, what does this text mean? Level 3, how can I relate to the text? At level 1, we are simply bullet pointing or summarizing. That's all we're doing. What does the text say? We try and just jot down a few ideas. At level 2, what does the text mean? We divide it up into 2A and into 2B. At 2A, we simply ask you to bullet point 3 possible messages or themes of the text. At level 2B, we are working with what we call rhetoric. R-H-E-T-O-R-I-C, the rhetorical level of reading. Here, not what the author says, but how the author says it. We're always going to use our textbook and the preparing to read stuff called literary analysis or literary techniques. At level 3, we also divide into 3 parts, 3A and 3B. At level 3, we ask, how does this text, 3A, how does this text relate to other texts I know? So, for example, we might bullet point 3 other texts that come to mind. I keep using the word text. It is an inclusive word for us. Not only what you read, but what you watch. So video, movies, music, all constitute text for us. We hold as equal value Shakespeare's Hamlet and the film Dumb and Dumber. We do not argue that one is superior to the other. They're all texts. They're all of value. You play video games, that is a text, and can easily relate to a lot of the stuff that we'll be working with in our class together. Finally, 3B. How does this text relate to me personally? Here, you write just a brief 5 sentences, trying in some way to relate to the text personally. Now, that's a lot of intel. And you'll be a whole lot better at it 3 weeks into our course, because guess what? You're going to be doing it over and over again, right? This is the skill set you develop and learn the best. But let's do a little practice. Wordsworth said something quite intriguing. My heart leaps up, he said, when I behold a rainbow in the sky. You're working, of course, with the little passage that is sitting in front of you. He says, my heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. So was it when my life began? So is it now? I am a man. So be it when I shall grow old, or let me die. The child is father of the man. And I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety. Now, this is a poem written by a British poet named Wordsworth. Okay. And he says something about rainbows that's kind of fascinating. What does he say about rainbows? My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky means what? When I look at rainbows, what? I get happy feet. Dude, I love rainbows. Now, if I'm working level 1, I'm just simply providing a little summary, aren't I, right? A level 1 observation would be this, and he wrote it when he was an old fart. He wrote it when he was older. He says, when I see rainbows, dude, I get way happy. So was it when my life began? So you could do this easy. What does he mean by that? I like rainbows when what? I was young. So is it now? I am a man. I still what? Like rainbows. So be it when I shall grow old.
I will still like rainbows when I'm...
Or let me die. Whoa, what's this old man say? If there ever comes a point, he says, in my life, when I look at a rainbow and I don't get totally jazzed about rainbows, he hopes that what? I hope he just dies. Which is an interesting observation. Really? Dude, rainbows? See, we might jump to level 2A and say, what is he really saying about growing old? Well, he doesn't want to lose the heart of a... What's the last 2 lines? The child is father of the man. Can children teach adults anything? Yeah. We're kind of familiar with that concept, aren't we? A senior once said, I kind of get this. My mom raised me. I'm about to graduate, she said. My mom raised me. Now it's my turn to turn around and raise her. Whoa. So you think about that. There's some things your parents can't learn without you. It requires your growing up for them to learn it. Isn't that fascinating? Which is why, for some of us, we're going to have to deal with that project. And it ain't a pretty picture come that day of graduation when the mascara runs and all of that. And he says, and I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety. Piety we might look up because it's a word we're unfamiliar with. Piety here means holy, pure, good, childlike. He says about his life from the beginning to the end, I hope I always have the heart of a child who can still enjoy rainbows. Now, we could work at level 2A and ask, what are some possible messages or themes? We could look at level 2B and say, you know, this is an interesting little poem that has all kinds of interesting things happening. So, for example, we can look at it as, my heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. Or we can slow the cadence down and notice there's a rhythm here. My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The entire poem, of course, is playing that game. And for those of you who are into music, you'll recognize there's always music and language. We could jump to a 3A observation. Do you know a single text you're familiar with where an old man had to come to terms with the fact he had gotten old and grumpy, and a child maybe was the way that it was taught to him? And then finally, we do think of any Disney film immediately, don't we? And you'll look at 3A and say, wow, Disney was on to something raising us. You bet, up comes to mind immediately, doesn't it, for this one, right? And then finally, at 3B, we could ask, what do you want to connect? How do you connect to this? Do you like rainbows? Do they matter to you? Are you finding yourself now as a senior already becoming a grumpy old person? And do freshmen bug you in ways that you can't really explain? Because they have all this energy that, guess what? You had 3 years ago. I know, I was around. You had 3 years ago, but now you've gotten kind of old. And how many 40-year-olds do you know that get up every morning and go, yes, another day of work I get to go to. I'm so happy. As opposed to, oh, another day. What kind of 40-year-old will you be? You realize you're halfway there. What kind of 40-year-old will you be? Another interesting way to look at it, when an 18-year-old looks at you when you're 40, will they go, dude, I'd love to be like that? Or will they look at you and go, the way you look at most adults, oh, don't make me end up like that. Anything but that. Oh, no. Wordsworth says, your 40-year-old birthday and the attitude you have starts now. Now. You get to decide now. And if you can't enjoy a rainbow now, you ain't going to enjoy it when you're 40. If you can't see the value of life now, the joy of life now, you're not going to see it when you're 40. So, Wordsworth suggests maybe it's time to go to work. Wow, that was a little sermon.